Adelaide. Yeah.
How's Adelaide? Is it starting to get cool?
Yeah, no, it's getting pretty average. Yeah. No, today's actually a nice sunny day, but cool. 15
Yeah.
degrees, and I think weather comes in again tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
is what it is. Oh, nice
get a
part
bit
of the world.
get a bit sick of it by this time.
Yes, oh well. I mean, you do a little bit of traveling, don't you? Around the
Yeah, I do. Probably not. Well, yeah, get overseas a few, at least a couple of
yeah,
times a year, and
yeah.
we're trying to make a bit of a go of things in the US. So, and
Mm,
then I think I'll be going to Europe later in the year.
yeah,
Yeah, and get in a state of course,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. But I guess
of course.
like a lot of things too. A lot of your stuff is probably done like this too, right? Virtual stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You know.
and we're sort of on it all the time. Particularly
Yeah,
with US,
yeah, yeah,
opportunities
yeah,
and clients and so forth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And how's the whole sort of US journey going?
Oh, it's tough work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
How are you, Steve?
G'day, Luke. How are you? Hey, Dave.
Too bad. I think, Stephen, we met before. I think we've spoken once or twice. I get confused. I'm getting old.
Nah,
I've certainly know of you and heard a lot
nah,
about you, but I can't remember whether we've met.
I reckon the first time. So,
Nice to meet you, Steve.
yeah, nice to
Yeah.
see you.
So
Yeah.
you're aware. Yeah, Steve's been in the business came on as CEO sort of in February last year, Luke,
Yeah,
when Mark Daughter
yeah.
retired.
Yeah, yeah. No, fair enough, fair enough. And guys, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
We've got Dan, one of my tech artists, who's in Perth.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Who's
G'day,
going to be running the show. And guys, what I thought we'd do, if it's okay, is just really give you an overview of what we're trying to do with the Sketchtime world. And I appreciate you guys are a pretty sophisticated client, so we don't need to worry too much about explaining, what cesium is and what the Unreal Engine is and what photogrammetry is, and it's it amazes me how many, and you guys I'm sure come across this too, how many of our, supposed industry leaders know so little about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost a bit frightening. But anyway, it is what it is. I guess there's also an opportunity there and in a positive side of things. And I guess, we'll run through a little bit of the demo, then maybe we'll sort of peel Dan off and we'll just have a bit of a chat around, what I'm trying to do and how we might be able to help each other or otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's okay.
Excellent.
And again, we'll run through this pretty quickly. And then we'll have some questions and answers then, see where it takes us. But long story short, I guess really during COVID, we got smashed really hard during COVID, to be honest. But I saw that as an opportunity, as you do sometimes to pivot. And, I guess, what it was 4 years ago, I just started to put my thinking cap on and said, God, imagine if we could take the power of these tools that we've been using now with, particularly the Unreal Engine, and we just started to play with cesium and the AWS journey was probably just starting. I said, imagine we could develop, that toolkit and sort of give that to anyone, and the key here is to give it to anyone without any technical knowledge and know-how, and, really use the Epic gaming engine to do what it's good at, to take my 4 decades, I'm an urban planner by trade, and, all the stuff behind me. There's a lot of planning work, and I'm very aware of the process and how antiquated it still is. And I said, imagine we could sort of transform that process and give anyone just a series of tool things that they could play with. But I guess the long-term vision for me also was a bit like what Epic and Cesium and AWS are doing too. You don't limit it to simply an industry. You almost open it up for anyone. I'm sure you guys are the same. With your photogrammetry, you might have started in a particular phase or your LiDAR data, but really with where this technology is going and the ability to access things, particularly now with AWS and all that sort of stuff, it's kind of, we really don't want to limit, who can use this. And so our, ultimate strategy here is to take this product and literally, in an ideal world, it's a bold vision, but, put it in the hands of all the school kids, give it to the schools for free, give it then put it in the universities as a base toolkit, and then, it becomes sort of the base sort of platform that's used as you move into your professional career, but certainly not limited to the planning and infrastructure AEC space. That's kind of where we're starting because that's what we know and where we are. But the long-term vision is something certainly different. One of the things that I never realized, was just how much data was out there. and how much data is available and how much data should be available and is not available because of egos and of course of other political sort of agendas. So part of our remit when we started this was just to start to explore both at a national and state level what sort of data sets were there and how easy or otherwise it was to really, I guess this whole journey, this is moving from the static 2D world, which is our industry is just full of, into an immersive 3D world from day one, and do that by, using cesium as your base to understand your site in 3D first, whether that's just through cesium tile sets or data sets such as the stuff that you guys have. Understand that world in 3D first, overlay the data sets that might influence your decision. Yeah, and we've just at the moment just started to tap into data sets that are freely available. I guess our long-term goal, and we're not data experts by any stretch of the imagination. Dan's done a good job finding all this stuff, but what it shows me is just how much data is there and how much more impactful it is when you put it into a real-world, spatially accurate, data set. So we start to think about, we start with cesium, we start with data sets, and then we give people tools to start doing whatever they want to do. And so, what we've got here is still very early days, and we've probably had 60 of these sorts of meetings that we're having with you guys today around the country with both governments and private developers and consultants, just sort of gathering feedback, because I guess just out of all of this, we're trying to work out whether there's a market for this. I mean, we generally think there is, but at the end of the day, as you guys well know, it doesn't really matter what you guys think. It's what your customers are willing to pay for and what they want to grab. As I think we're fortunate enough to get an Epic Mega Grant for this. It wasn't a big Epic Mega Grant; it was a little one, but still, to have those guys supporting us as cesium are and as AWS are is pretty impressive. But all Dan's doing, again, you guys are sophisticated enough to understand all this. He's just tapping into just a whole range of data sets. So these are shipwrecks over in WA, and who knows where this will go. And certainly part of their long-term investment strategy is getting people into the business or being merged with businesses that know a lot more about global data and cloud-based data than us. And to be able then to have it all queried is, I said, it's all there. And this is just all proof of concept of what's out there. We're still working on the UI and the filtering of these data sets because it's too complicated for mine at the moment. And I said the key to this thing is that it's got to be, a 6-year-old's got to be able to step in and, find and search and do all that sort of stuff. But we know that's just all, user interface and user experience, which we can work on as time and money permits. But really, all this was showing to us is that how much data is out there, and I guess also, I guess acknowledging that the journey of digital twinning around the world, I think, is shifting from when it sort of first started, it was almost perceived to be a product, and you had to license or use the product, to flipping that on its head to say no, the digital twin is really just a lens of data or data which can be opened and up and used any way through any device and through any bit of software that you can. And I think that's ultimately where we'll go. I think and you guys will be across the stuff that Data 61 and CSIRO are doing on, Victoria and New South Wales, which is a start, but it's, got a long way to go in terms of opening up data sets. But I think they'll go there. I think the industry will demand that. And certainly in other parts of the world, as I understand it, that's a much more, open source journey. But again, the concept here was just simply tapping into data, putting it over a spatially accurate 3D world and understanding, where things are at. Then we wanted to sort of move to, and then we might just jump across and do some of our Sketchtime stuff. And at the end of the day, we call this Sketchtime because we want people, to use it as soon as they come up with an idea, start sketching in 3D in real time, collaboratively, in a spatially accurate world. This is the thing that really interested, Epic when we first showed Ken and the guys, geez, probably 3 years ago. And, it's still early days yet, but here's Dan, drawing on ridge lines and doing all that sort of stuff. But the key thing is that it's all happening in 3D, whether it's on topography or whether it's on, photogrammetry or whatever. That was a pretty cool thing a couple of years ago when we first started that. And then we thought, and we want to do that at any scale, whether it's the big sort of broad brush sort of infrastructure planning, right down to, a millimetre thick, drawing on the side of a building or a wall. So you can sort of zoom down to as much detail as you like and adjust your pen thicknesses and that sort of stuff. And that's why we kind of call it Sketchtime, I suppose. And as I said, you can do that also in the built form world and the photogrammetry side of things as well. But then what we wanted to do is just provide all these widgets. And I guess part of our journey with this enabling technology is all the things that take time, how could we, create little programs and little widgets that, do what we normally do, but do it in a push of a button, like, walkable catchments, which is the basis of all planning and urban design, and just create little widgets that you can change yourself, and there'll be hundreds of them, so we've just started the journey just doing some demos. So, grid paper in the old days, they probably still do. You used to put grid paper under your butter paper to draw in terms of getting scale, that's how you did it. So let's just do it digitally, same deal. And then we'll have, sorry, Dan, I know I'm jumping around a fair bit, some of these, what do you got there, Dan? What are we jumping in? Do you want to go into some of the calculator stuff? Yeah. So things like, for instance, really crudely, if you're looking at a big chunk of development, Dan is going big. He's obviously a lend lease or something. He's buying a whole farm out there. But very quickly give you the size of the property, work out really crudely what your efficiency might be of it, put in your average lot sizes, and punch things out really quickly. And the reality is that in any industry, and there's so many industries that are now just governed or controlled by, criteria and statistics, this is where this stuff really comes into play. We're talking to KPMG the other day around the whole how this has to reshape the way they do business cases. And you take all the quantity surveyor sort of data sheets and rate cards and create these little widgets that you can sit there in real time and just do stuff. And do it really quickly. So Dan's doing stuff on solar panels and on efficiencies and all this sort of stuff, all of which is data that's sitting there. We're just going to plug it into a widget that makes it simple and accurate to understand. And then ultimately, who knows where this will go with AI? We haven't really even touched on all that. But again, ultimately, it'll be quite extraordinary where AI will take this stuff again, particularly when there's, it's like the engineering or the architects, when they're working to codes, they're working to criteria, that's really where I think the AI stuff will come into play. So Dan's just sort of dragging and dropping a lot of planning icons and widgets. And I said, whilst we're starting in the sort of planning and architectural space, we see this sort of tool and this opportunity going across just about any industry where you could benefit from a sandbox that is based around a spatially accurate 3D world to start with, which is just about any and every industry that deals in the global world. So hey Dan, you're doing a really good job. One of the really interesting things here is that this is a real showcase of how well the AWS pixel streaming journey is going. Dan's sitting in Perth, he's logging into his machine on the Gold Coast and pinging access out of Sydney, out of a server in Sydney, and so it's pretty responsive, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so part of our 2D world here, again, we think about concepts and think about one of the big issues that our industry continually struggles with is people understanding spatial awareness. So our journey here is that if you know a project anywhere in the world, and now that you've got your ship and clip stuff happening and that sort of stuff, it's even more relevant, is that you can go and we're just doing it in 2D at the moment, you go and grab something off Google or whatever, the area that drag and drop it and put it into your scene or your site at scale, or then you can link back into Google and have a look at where it is in Google and use Google and what it can do also. But the whole idea of the 2D drag and drop stuff is that you can really simply and quickly understand the spatial requirements that you might be looking for. Now, I think that's a school, isn't it, Dan? But whether it's a tennis court, whether it's a port, whether it's an airport, whether it's a solar farm, anything that has a spatial reality to it, we want to be able to set up a whole lot of filters, drag and drop, bring it in at scale, and so almost create this little jigsaw of land use requirements that might be sensible and suitable. Hey Dan, let's flip down into Brisbane and let's do our favourite 2D over the Gabba, which is up here in Queensland. Obviously, we've got the Olympics coming up, and there's been an enormous amount of debate, around facilities. In fact, I'm meeting with the opposition leader here next week because, in Queensland, there's an absolute, it's kind of sad, but there's a real bit of doubt as whether the current government is going to be able to deliver all the stuff they've got to deliver on time and on budget and all this sort of stuff. So why don't we grab the, will you put the photogrammetry in there, Dan, or you got the OSM buildings there? Anyway,
just the OSM.
Okay.
It's easier to see.
Okay, so just maybe turn this off for a moment, just to take me back to the story. So that's the Gabba there in Brisbane, and for most people, when you think of Olympics, you think of a reasonable sized stadium, 80, 100,000. I mean, the Gabba's a 50 odd thousand stadium. And there, you know, there's I think a pretty well, I think most people in the know now, you know, think the Queensland government maybe lost an opportunity to maybe build a facility elsewhere that's going to be bigger than ripping this down and just doing another 50,000 seat stadium. But one of the really easy ways of helping people understand that there's just not enough space there is, as Dan just did, he just dragged the Sydney Olympic facilities and their you know, warm-up tracks, dropped it over the Gabba. Look at the size difference, you know, and to be able to do that again out of a push of a button to say, well, there's the Accor Stadium. I think it's called Accor Stadium. Dan just dragged that big one over a bit, line it up a bit. Yeah, you know, so for non-technical people to understand really quickly that there ain't the space there to do 100,000, you know, or 80,000, you know, seat stadium with all the sort of pedestrian plazas you need around it. It's a really fast way of doing that, you know, and just simple things like that. Like our journey here is how do you know, most decision makers, rightly or wrongly, are pretty much non-technical, you know, and they really rely on, you know, their consultants and whatever to advise them. What we're trying to do is flip that around to actually give the decision makers tools that help them make a more informed decision faster without the need for all these third-party, you know, interpretations and advice and all that sort of stuff. We call it the funnel of chaos, where you take data and you take the subject matter experts, and down the bottom is the decision maker, often non-technical, that's relying on all the stuff that happens above, and the amount of inefficiencies and errors, omissions is quite extraordinary. So that's a really simple, good example of the 2D journey with the you know, with the stadium there. Now the same concept applies from a 2D world into a 3D world, you know, even more relevant now with the amount of, you know, data that's becoming available. So whether it's your own SketchUp models or whether it's your own, you know, architectural models or whatever, or whether it's, you know, photogrammetry. So Dan's just starting with, you know, existing models, or whether it's models you buy off TurboSquid, to be able to drag and drop and put them over the top of something. So again, Dan's just going to bring the Olympic Stadium from London, I think. Now, in fairness, we are in Australia, so we do have to rely on the fantastic internet we have here, you know. But again, you know, so that's just simply the stadium without the surrounding area sitting over the Gabba. So really quickly, people can sort of see that spatial challenge, I suppose, as to what it is. And to be able to sort of ultimately, I mean, you guys would be familiar, I guess, with, and I got to be careful that I draw these comparisons, but I can't help, because this is where we started. You know, the Canva, the 2D.
Yep.
So I think what they did for 2D world, we would do the same in the 3D world. Yeah, I'm oversimplifying it, but you know, they're just tapping into existing data sets, existing templates, and creating a really nice user interface for non-technical people to use. That's what we want to do. Simple as that, you know, but at a much more, I guess, interesting and sophisticated level using the, you know, the power of the Unreal Engine. So Dan, whilst we're there, so again, there'll be hundreds and thousands of data sets, and importantly, you know, you'll be able to upload your own data set. So when we're talking to, you know, the big consultancy businesses, they'll have their own Sketchtime version that will have their own data in there. And you think about, you know, we're dealing with Walker Corp and Stocklands and these big development companies. One of the really sad things is that there's a real lack of appreciation of the value of digital data. You know, when you think about all the data they've procured over the years for certain applications that get used and then just sort of left in the bucket, left over there. Imagine we can give it all a new life and actually ultimately put some digital assets onto the balance sheet. So that's a long-term vision, but why not? So what Dan's just done here whilst I'm talking, he's dragging and dropping the Gold Coast light rail, or any light rail, through the middle of Main Street, dropping in the station, and very, very quickly, anyone can start to understand the spatial impact or requirements of dropping a light rail and a station into that street and what that means. And then to build that up with landscaping and people and all those sorts of assets that create an environment, to do that really, really quickly. So within 10 or 15 minutes, to have this outcome that, you know, from a concept point of view, from a sandbox point of view, you can either go, yeah, this makes sense or doesn't make sense. But importantly, provides, I guess, the non-technical people with an opportunity to sort of, you know, get involved with the process much, much earlier. And again, I come back to that funnel of chaos. Most often the decision makers don't get briefed on something until there's all this stuff's happened up here. Well, what if the decision maker could be part of that process from day one? So, you know, Dan's just doing this, you know, very, very crudely and quickly, but that's the whole idea. And what we want to do is let anyone do this, you know, and then ultimately once we move into, you know, UE5 and you know, other things with the mesh and that, you know, to be able to set parameters around the gradients of those rails and the gradients of roads. Who knows where it will all go? And it's the same concept with roads. So there's, I think, 25 or 26 standard roads across the country. We want to create a really simple drag and drop tool that does the same thing with roads. So Dan, you want to quickly do that somewhere? Maybe we're going to duck into Roma Street, or just put it on the road there. I don't care. Find a space, put the elevated rail. I don't care what you want to do, but so again, we want to try to develop the whole suite of these outcomes. And again, in fairness, the long-term goal is that, each state, each country will probably have their own standards that you'd work with. So what have you dragged out here, Dan?
This is the elevated highway.
Elevated highway. Oh, there you go. But again, to be able to do all that quickly and easily, then to have sort of a rate card behind that looks at cost of construction, all those sorts of things, and be able to provide a back end that if you have the technical knowledge, you can feed into that to make that more accurate. What we're going to do with, again, UE5 is just, I guess, through their procedural meshes is sort of, again, just to improve all of that. But yeah, there's, as I said, there's 20 odd, 30 odd roads throughout the country that we've able to do that with. What are you going to doing next, Dan? What have you done there, mate? Oh, there we go. That's a
elevated rail.
Yeah. So what, one of the challenges too, of course, is just, oh, that's cool. But again, to be able to just, take these digital assets and create them into an opportunity to drag and drop stuff very quickly into a spatially accurate environment and understand it and move forward more with a more informed, base is kind of where we're going. So the concept, as I said, is be able to, I guess a couple of different options is either through a cesium tile set or through them sitting, and Dan, let me know if I'm getting this terminology wrong, through an S3 that we're using up on Amazon to be able to store your own stuff, drag and drop and bring stuff in very quickly is what it's all about. All these little spline tools, to be able to just drag things out, whether that's bollards, anything in the sort of built form environment, street poles, fences. You want to put a fence along there somewhere, Dan, or something? And the concept here too, long term is, almost have an environment. We were talking to somebody the other day. They said, listen, what if we want you to develop specific tools just for us? And I said, yeah, we can do that. But then maybe what we might do after 12 months or whatever, if you're open to this, if those toolkits are, got some street cred and got some value for a broad audience, we put them on the marketplace, if you like, and there's a licensing fee that whoever we've created for gets some sort of perpetual return from the other people tapping into their assets. So the long-term picture with this is that it's not only a SaaS solution that you license, but then there's a whole series of toolkits and assets and a whole suite of other things that might provide a whole new level of revenue that is at a different level again. And to be perfectly frank, this is an area that's way beyond my remit, and certainly part of our long-term, well, not long-term, but part of our investment strategy or partnership strategy is to try to find people that know a lot more about this than us. Now, the other interesting thing too is that we are also developing all these tools to where possible float into our V2i real-time world, which is our consultancy business. Where we've done things like Cross-River Rail and do all these sorts of things where we can bring these toolkits into that journey too. But that's that's the fee for service side of things, and that's kind of what we're doing in the interim because we're still a little bit away from getting this thing to the market. So Dan's just tapping in the comments tool here. This will all be version controlled, and everything here is geo-referenced. So that's spline, everything. And what we want to do too, we're very much about open source, open architecture, not wanting to, I meant to say this carefully because I'm a bit ignorant when it comes to all this, but we want to provide, a platform and a tool to give people opportunities to do things with it that we're not even aware of, So if somebody's got knowledge of the Unreal Engine, knowledge of cesium, knowledge of whatever, they can build upon this themselves in their own way.
So like you would provide this as like an OEM for people to build upon, a bit like what, I guess what the Data 61 guys are sort of doing, building custom solutions for people.
Yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, you know, we can't quite compare ourselves to Data 61. We're not quite in the same remit. We don't quite have that government support, but you know, we kind of, you know, want it to be open source and open architecture, and you know, be sort of pretty collaborative with what we're trying to do here, and to tap into the various data sets, and to let people access what data sets they need to do what they want to do. You know, I mean, it is the Unreal Engine, and you know, it is a game, and it's like, hey, Dan, you wanted to quickly do some of your explore mode stuff. I know it's still work in progress, or whatever, but certainly, you know, getting this into the schools, you know, the kids are just interested in having a play and understanding stuff from a spatially accurate point of view. You know, go to Mount Everest or go to Paris, and then just you know, fly around Paris or do what you want to do, which Dan will do in a moment, you know. But again, just using Epic for all the good things you can do. You know, fly around and where are you, Dan? Here we go. And again, to be able now, through all the data sets you guys have, and you know what, you know, Google have got to do this anywhere in the world now. And then, you know, we're talking about the guys in the movie making industry, and the you know, the universities creating you know, using this to create sort of cinematics for movies and a whole lot of other things. Who knows? And then of course you can flip over to the chopper, all that stuff that, you know, the Unreal Engine allows you to do. And this is what, you know, this is what sort of gets get the kids hooked into, you know, understanding the world in a more sort of spatially accurate way. In fact, you know, we're doing some work down here with a couple of universities, and they sort of say that, you know, the biggest issue they have with their students is their inability to understand, you know, understand the world spatially, because they're just used to doing stuff in 2D. So that's the other sort of real big game changer.
Oh, look, I think, you know, I mean, you know, planning, architecture, they've all got to sort of move down this very sophisticated 3D path, because, yeah, kids are growing up with games, and, you know, to go backwards and use these 2D worlds, you know, it doesn't work for them.
Well, that's the other beauty. I mean, every kid, not every kid, but, you know, there aren't too many kids around that don't know the Unreal Engine. So we've been doing some of this testing with school kids, and as soon as you mention the Unreal Engine, they're into it. They don't need any convincing that it's good. Yeah, so what Dan's done here is a good example. So this is just using cesium tile sets. So this is taking a really complex, you know, the complex Rome Street station in Brisbane, on the rail station, and basically streaming it in via cesium ion. Dan, I get confused. Tile set. And so, yeah, that, you know, that's the other big breakthrough is, again, the cesium guys have been great, and we're doing a fair bit. We're actually going for a grant at the moment.
And the team.
Going for a grant at the moment that enables, you know, consultants, whatever, to really do this themselves and to upload their models and bring them into their own scene and drag and drop it and sort of understand it in the spatially accurate world from day one. So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I saw that you guys have gone through certified developers.
We were the one of the first of the first eight, I suppose, that we did that with. We've sort of got a fair bit of, some of our code up there with them, and we do a fair bit of stuff with them and the UDN and that sort of stuff. Dan, I've done that all pretty quickly, mate. Are we anything there that we've kind of you know, missed? Really, I know we've done this faster than what we do with most other people, but
I don't think so. I think that's basically it.
Just one question, and it's just because it's a little pet thing of mine. Do you guys have the ability to manipulate, say, the 3D mesh at all?
We do that manually. Sorry, Dan, you answer first.
At the moment, we can't, or we can like mask things out. So if you wanted to clip out this building and then place something on top of it, then you can do that. Now, like that. We don't have the ability yet we haven't done the pipeline for extracting that clipped out mesh yet, so you can put it in something else.
Yeah, still even just doing what you've just done there is quite helpful, because you want
to Dan, just drag and drop another building onto that, you know, just say you want to put a couple of Brisbane high rise. So again, as I said at the start, guys, you know, this is early days, you know, we're probably 5% into the journey. I mean, all we're trying to do is see if there's a taste for what we're doing and to see if there's some interest in trying to find people to help us, you know.
Absolutely.
Because you know, I'm a very small business, and I'm really impressed and proud of what we've done. But you know, we need some serious help to take this further. And I guess our ideal partners or you know, whatever, are people that I don't need to explain what the Unreal Engine can do. I don't need to explain the power of cesium. I don't need to explain the power of data. Ideally, we want people that sort of get that this is just an opportunity to build upon, and that there's a global demand for this stuff. And it's as I said, there's only so much that I can do. And we've got a long roadmap. But again, you guys would be well across all this too. The roadmap really needs to be governed by our customers' demand. But having said that, everything we've shown to everyone, they kind of say, hey, when can we grab it? There's nothing here that people say that'd be a waste of time. And that's only because, I've lived and breathed this process for, 4 decades, and I know the amount of time that's wasted, and the ability to, do what Dan's doing and to sort of very quickly get, sequential arrangement.
I mean, there's been some great sort of desktop solutions over the years, and we've, delivered into a lot of them, but having something that's web-based and, the Unreal Engine just brings, the whole world of visuals that, most of these other platforms don't do. And then obviously with the link with cesium and being able to stream data in was a game changer as well. So look, I think, that you're really on the right path here. And, we've been sort of, looking for platforms ourselves as almost default delivery mechanisms for our clients, because, and we would love, tools like this sort of at our disposal to help our clients. So, I'm sort of really keen to sort of understand how you sort of, how essentially you're selling your platform that you're developing, and just what your business model is around that.
Yeah, and listen, and to be perfectly honest, David, that's a good question, because we've got some really crude ideas, but to be honest, it's almost a bit early for me to answer those questions, because I need investment and partners, and I need expertise to know how best to answer that question. Our simple version is that it's a licensing model. I'm making these numbers up because this is how we started. This is what we did our sort of feasibilities on. It's like it might even be a freemium to premium type journey, but our idea is that it gets into schools pretty much for free. We've already spoken to the guys at Amazon around their opportunities, and they obviously deal with a lot of education, both schools and universities, and that they provide, because at the end of the day, there's a web costing and hosting to this, which there's a dollar factor there, and we're needing support in how best to work through that. Move it up into universities where it's basically the cost of a book. It's a $250, base license. But again, with a series of other add-ons that you can add on to if you want. And then there's a professional, maybe $750 a year license per seat. Again, with various data sets and various marketplace opportunities. And again, thinking out loud, it may be that there's an AEC, toolkit. There's a film industry toolkit. There's a infrastructure and sustainability toolkit, because not everyone wants all these planning tools. Only the planners want those. But then we want to ultimately develop tools that other people want. And we want to have a little web page that says, tell us what tools you'd like, and we'll develop them and get them up there, because generally speaking, they're not that hard to develop. Because of how the gaming engine works.
So at the moment, Luke, are you guys going to start, say, with urban planning, get something to market, and then look at the other industries?
Again, the low-hanging fruit, subject to what partner investments and whoever else we get on board. But the idea was to tap into those that already know the Unreal Engine, cesium, and AWS, and predominantly the AEC community to start with. But again, just to be open to other opportunities. Most definitely. But again, that AEC market, and even the amount of people downloading Twinmotion, for instance, I got some figures from Ken the other day, and I think they were up to, I can't remember, it was like 2.4 million downloads, maybe 3 million downloads, and they're selling that professionally now. Not all of those are obviously professional packages, but I think that's what $750 a download or whatever. So, even that sort of market. So, but I got to say, guys, it's still the very early days. Even though this all looks pretty cool, and it is, to be perfectly honest, I know nothing about the SaaS world. I know nothing about taking this to market. And that's what we're trying to do, is find some partners or but we're talking to other groups about merger and acquisitions, just to take on board, because we're not a big team, we're a fairly small team, where we can work within an organisation to potentially improve what they're doing and how they're offering their solutions, whether that's engineering or urban planning or so the KPMGs of the world, and then complement that with the ability for this SaaS world. Conversely, we find someone that's in that SaaS world that's really not interested in the consultancy world and just wants to go to that sort of journey straight away. So being the owner and sole director of the company makes it pretty easy for me to make decisions pretty quickly as to what I want to do. But at the end of the day, guys, I guess, to be honest, we're talking to you because, to be perfectly frank, Rob Clout said to me a while back, guys, at some point you guys should talk with Aerometrex because they may well be able to help in this journey, because they're already in that space. And we've been great fans. When I first met Rob, I don't know when that was, 5 years ago, I looked at your product and thought, fuck, how do we I'd never seen it before, and I said, how do we integrate, how do we use that? And here we are 5 years down the track, and it's to be honest,
I think we're hugely complementary, Luke.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously specialize in the data, you specialize in the delivery. We've obviously had, and we appreciate the support, and we've had some good projects together over the years. But I think we're certainly, as a business, looking at more of the solution, and we don't have the ability to create something like what you've created here, and very easily. So it's certainly attractive, I think, to us in how we might get involved with where you're going. So, and again, just thinking instead of complementary and how we can both maximize each other's potential.
No, so I'm open to anyone that has an appreciation for what we're doing, because it does my head in, and Dan, I mean, Dan's a very skilled and talented senior tech artist, and the amount of meetings we have, right, Dan, we've said this so many times, that how many senior people we talk to that have never seen cesium, that don't understand photogrammetry, that are just so used to this 2D world, just does my head in, and I know the thing that holds me back, guys, and I'm sure it's the same with any small business trying to, deliver this stuff, is, it's an education piece, and again, COVID really killed me in the sense that, it knocked our business to 6. I mean, I've invested probably, rightly or wrongly, most of this cash we've had into the development of this stuff, to the point that, I just don't have the capacity to travel like I used to travel, and even just to, get some marketing budget to sort of go back and do sponsorships at, industry events, and get, move around the country and talk to people and show them this. Because I must admit, and maybe it's a bit different in your world, but for me, it's so much more effective doing this stuff face to face, particularly with anything new. Because it amazes me, so many people just think they're looking at a video or they just don't get that it's all done real time live. And then I think the other thing too that is very strategic and sensible is the opportunity to tap into an organisation that's already got, some sort of global reach, some sort of global connection, is the other sort of, big opportunity. Because again, as you well know, our little market here in Australia is what it is. And certainly the growth of digital twins, the growth of the acceptance of the Unreal Engine and cesium, sort of, on an international level, is at a different scale to what it is here in Australia. So, also sort of looking at that,
So, I mean, how do you see the data? You've obviously got your hands on a lot of data here, Luke, and a lot of probably free data feeds and so forth, and some some loan data and so forth. But how do you see, I mean, do you guys see yourselves as a bit of a marketplace for everybody's data?
Absolutely. And again, this is where I'll take advice from people much wiser than I, but I would have thought that if you had just think of Canva, same thing, they just tap into all this data, all these templates, all these assets that are there, and you can drag and drop and filter and tailor your Canva package to what you need. that's kind of what we see here is, you know, for us, you know, I guess at the end of the day, we are at this point in time, until something changes, we're tied to the Unreal Engine, you know, and we're also, you know, I'm going to say we're pretty well married to Cesium. Both of those companies are doing some pretty interesting stuff, and they're continually, you know, investing in this space. And we find them, both companies, as being really approachable and very easy to work with. In fact, when I talk to the Epic guys, you know, now things might have changed, but you know, they're just not that interested in becoming this, you know, this global monster. They want to keep it fairly contained.
Well, you don't think they already are?
Well, but you know, no, compared to what they could be, you know, like when I asked them the other day around, you know, licensing and around, you know, auditing, and how do they check, you know, that, you know, they're getting their revenue from their whatever. They just said, look, we don't. It's an honor system. you know. So
Wow.
you know, and they just
they have too much coming in from Fortnite.
Yeah, well, that's right. And you got, you know, and I don't know. Apparently, you know, Sony put $1 billion into them, and Lego put $1 billion into them, and you know, and so you know, come on, Dan, stop playing with the trucks there. And I guess Cesium are kind of a little bit the same too, right? You know, because there are different, you know, and again, that's kind of cool. And I got to be perfectly frank.
Trying to create an ecosystem.
Yeah. So when we talk to other organisations, we get a very different response, you know. And so, you know, we, you know, again, it's early days, but we just think that sort of open collaborative journey is interesting. You know, we've been fortunate enough to be in this space now for 8 years. I mean, as soon as Unreal Engine opened up their engine, we jumped straight into it. Same as Cesium, same with AWS. And I think they you know, they sort of acknowledge that too, which is good. And we just want to try to find people that can help us have a bit more fun with it, expand it, and importantly, provide people with the toolkit for them to do some incredible things that aren't us, it's them. But we just want to give them exposure. And in terms of the business strategy, I guess in my mind, I always saw this as being a number of steps where you get this launch, you get this moving, and you're open, and you stay open to possibilities. You know, and it might be, you know, someone said to me the other day from the movie industry here, who did a demo to this too. You know, they said, geez, you know, Google should buy this. And I said, oh, really? But again, you know, who knows where it might go. But I guess, guys, I can be honest. I know I can't take this business to where it needs to go. I need people around me that have, you know, a much more expertise and knowledge of you know, the challenges and the realities of trying to develop the software as a service. That's not me, and I'm very aware of that. And you know, to be honest, a big chunk of our investment strategy is getting those expertise into the business, or alternatively, if we're acquired by somebody that's got those, you know, even better, because it reduces the path to market in terms of, you know, dollars required and those sorts of things. So you know, I guess without oversimplifying it, there's probably, you know, a couple of simple questions. You know, one, do you think it's worthwhile pursuing what we're doing? You know, and you know, would it be something that if it was there, you know, that you and or your clients might use? You know, that's from a simple sort of, you know, are we heading in the right direction? And then there's, you know, the other discussion, you know, and I might ask Dan to pop on off in a moment if there's any opportunities to talk about, you know, how we could do something from a business point of view, because I need help. Simple as that.
I just wanted to confirm one thing. Like, so this is using Unreal Engine. So it's not via a web browser, is it? It's a desktop.
No, it's ultimately going to be via a web browser. Absolutely. Okay. So at the moment, phase one is desktop, a bit like Twinmotion. You know, it's desktop, but it'll all go to the web. So, and Dan, you can answer this more in a more technical way. But we've started to develop that journey, like all of our pixel streaming. That we do for our V2i real-time consultancy business is all web-based. But Sketchtime, because it's got a lot of these runtime tools, we just haven't gone. That's just another. That's the next, you know, phase of our development. You know,
and it'll be pixel streaming that takes it to the web.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to answer that more technically than I?
No, that about covers it. It'll be pixel streamed. We currently do pixel streaming for our real-time stuff, delivers it with a web UI, so it's dynamic, usable on like mobile touch or desktop, so it'll be the same thing.
And do you see
Sorry, go
I
on.
was just going to say, do you see pixel streaming as a scalable? Obviously, commissioning high-end machines might be good for serving a few users, particularly in a more services type business. But if you're trying to create something at scale like a SaaS business, I mean, does pixel streaming work in that way? Do you see?
Do you want to answer that technically first, Dan, and then I'll
Sure.
answer it?
Yeah, it makes sense. So the Unreal Engine, they deliver their MetaHuman creator through a web platform that uses pixel streaming. They've transferred to UE5 now, but they invested in TensorWorks, which is a company on the Gold Coast. So they have produced a solution that does dynamic scaling and shared instances. So if you're running like you can run 10 users with their own build served off a single instance. So it's making more efficient use of those online instances to distribute the build better. So if a user then has like a really complex scene that demands something else, you can offload other users from that instance onto a new instance as that spools up.
Okay.
And I think that's all, again, part of the licensing model. Different people will have different requirements and different professions and different phases. Some of our clients, for instance, so some of the big national development companies are running pixel streaming, looking at running it, 24/7. At the moment, our pixel streaming is, we give them a switchboard, they turn it on and off, costs them 50 cents an hour to run. Now those costs are coming down and down and down because AWS know that this is the future. And so they're solving, and again, so Unreal's looking at TensorWorks and that sort of stuff. But we know already that some of our consultants, some of our big development companies are willing to pay just for ease of access that it's running 24/7, Now that's, obviously not for everyone, but we also know that AWS and their metaverse journey are solving these problems. And that's what I love about the fact we're tapping into Epic, Cesium, and AWS.
Yeah,
they're the ones spending the billions of dollars on making sure that it's going to be accessible for anyone to do this, because they want people to do this. It's like Cesium. Our ultimate goal is that all of our development clients have Cesium Ion accounts. Simple. And it's not hard and it's not expensive, but it's good exposure to that sort of world. But again, I'll be honest, guys, this is just me and my ideas, and they're completely, I won't say they're uneducated, that's the right thing to say, but for me, it's all logical where this goes, but I also know that it needs to be backed up with, the reality of what all this means and how it all works, which I don't have that experience. I have I often say it about our clients, and our people that we're talking to about. My company's called Vision to Implementation. I call it that because I know the journey of vision to implementation in the property and infrastructure journey. I've been in that space. I know the challenges, and I work with clients that have a vision and they struggle to implement it because of the processes, and we use these tools and technologies to help them with that and help people understand that vision. I'm in the exact reverse role now. Well, I've got a vision. I've got no really idea of the implementation challenges and realities. So I'm seeking help in that journey, with people that have done it,
No, it's good to understand.
See an opportunity.
It's good to understand where you are on the journey, and you're being very open and honest about exactly where you're at. And
mate, I'm a simple, honest man. Life is too short otherwise. It's as simple as that. Again, I'm really excited by what I think this stuff can do. I'm really proud of what the team have done. I'm also very focused, and Dan's heard this before. I want to give this team, if I can, an opportunity to be involved in something really special, over and beyond what I can give them, because it's a struggle. It's a struggle for me at the moment, and my biggest fear is not being able to continue this because of cash flow. And then it'd be an awful shame to lose. There's to be perfectly frank, on real time, there's been $7 or $8 million worth of R&D put into that. And it'd be Dan and the team know how long we've been on this journey. But it'd be great to be able to sort of, for them, give them an opportunity to do something more with their lives. They're all young people. I'm still young too, but they've got a future ahead of them. And I'd love to be able to be part of sort of giving a bit of a surety for them to be involved with something exciting too.
No, that's good. So you know, it sounds like you're having discussions with people around potential investment. So, you know, is there something specific you're targeting, or, you know, you're going for seed funding or
Yeah.
Series A
Hey-
funding? Or
Hey, Dan, I might leave you here, mate. Hey,
Okay, no worries.
that's right. But just be on standby in case I need to bring you back.
Okay, sure, no worries.
no,
Thanks,
look,
mate.
it was a great demo. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Nice to meet you. I'll stop
Thanks,
the